Hey, there's been some news. Well, what was the news? Did you hear the news? And the news is good, and it's good news. Did you hear the news? The 70s are back. Yeah. Oh yeah, okay. That's why I look fantastic today. Feel like I'm in my disco era. Ooh, okay. Too much physical labor. I'm still recovering from COVID, so I actually just spent the entire last weekend cooped up in like my 10 by 12 room, so naturally now I am going feral. In company with that very strange introduction, we are now going to be talking about one of the strangest releases of the year so far. I say this because you either fall into the camp of thinking that this is the best release of 2022, or you fall into the camp of thinking that it's only okay. I haven't seen anyone who hates it yet. I've really only seen those two camps. But what movie am I covering? Well, that would be Ty West's X. I'm gonna go over all of my spoiler-free and spoiler-filled thoughts today, and don't worry, there will be a timestamp linked down below if you want to just skip ahead to my spoiler thoughts. But if you haven't seen the movie yet, then you are safe for a little while. I also really wanted to dive into some of the behind-the-scenes stuff, but I couldn't find too much of that online. I could only find a few very surface-level interviews with a couple of the actresses from the film, and to be honest, I just did not find it that interesting. So we're gonna kick it off with all my spoiler-free thoughts. I'm just gonna start with my very first impressions of this movie. For the entire first act, I felt like I was watching a Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake, which of course was only strengthened by the fact that this movie takes place in 1979, but down to like tiny minute details. Like it went beyond paying homage and it just kind of felt like a ripoff to me. I guess you walk a really fine line when you do that between like paying homage and ripping something off, but hear me out. I thought that there was going to be some kind of crazy twist because they set up the entire first act in the vein of TCM. A group of young adults head through the back roads of Texas in a van and they meet some not so nice locals. So because the setup was so conventional, then I was expecting it to take a sharp turn so that they would like subvert my expectations. And I'm not going to spoil the plot, don't worry, but I will say that I don't think you're going to be that blown away by the twists of this movie. The story is just kind of meh, and especially if you're gonna set it up as a remake with constant homages to something like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you have to push the boundaries. Otherwise, I'm just gonna assume you thought that you could rip off TCM and get away with it. There are precisely two plot differences that I can notice between X and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but of course we'll get into that later. But only two! So in general, I found the story to be really boring because for whatever reason, I thought that I could expect an unconventional slasher. But that's what it is. It's a very conventional slasher with just a couple of modern twists. As far as the style of this movie goes, though, I have to commend them. It's a gorgeous looking movie for the most part, but I far preferred the style of the first act. They were doing this really cool thing where the stuff that the characters were shooting in the movie was kind of paralleled to the events of the actual movie, and they're stylized in a super cool way because they're in that kind of 3:4 ratio. It's shot on film, it looks like. But unfortunately, that is completely abandoned after the first act. And I'm glad that it was there, but also don't set up something that cool if you're just gonna take it away from me. Along with that, towards the end of the movie, they scatter in a couple of shots here and there that are really reminiscent of the shooting styles of late 70s and early 80s slashers. So there's a shot from the killer's POV in X, but to my recollection, there's only one of those shots in the entire movie. So again, I'm like, you're giving me crumbs. They had the opportunity to shoot these sequences in the style of a late 70s slasher, but then they only peppered in these little shots here and there. My thing with that is like, just be a little bit more consistent. Though I also enjoyed the modern camera work, this is a beautiful looking movie, but I guess it was just a little bit jarring, and as soon as I saw those cool old style shots, I was like, oh, I want more of that. All in all though, even though it's a little bit inconsistent, it's a great looking movie with great looking people, but let's talk about those people. The MVP was obviously Brittany Snow. She was the funniest part of this movie by a mile, and the only person in this movie who had a good grip on the Texan accent. Well, besides the mustache guy. Emergency. He didn't have a mustache. He didn't. Why do I remember him having a mustache? Sorry, carry on. You could tell me that this man was actually from Texas and I would not blink. The rest of the accents were pretty rough, and unfortunately the worst of which was Mia Goth's. As soon as the first line of dialogue came out of her mouth, I was like, Nah. I liked her character though. I think she still had a really good performance. I just wish that she practiced that accent a little bit more, because the whole movie I was slightly distracted and I was like, I know you're British. And then Jenna Ortega, I kind of give her a pass even though her accent was really inconsistent, because number one, she's only 19, and number two, girl, I see you doing everything in your power to dissociate from the fact that you were a Disney kid, and I applaud you for that. But with her being only 19, it was kind of weird to see her in this movie, because I'm assuming they probably shot it when she was like 18. And this movie was obviously so racy compared to all of her past work, and I was like, oh, you're just a child. But she still had a standout performance, as she always does. That's it for the acting and the characters in general, but the styling of these characters, like the wardrobe of this movie, was fantastic. So much 70s flair while still being kind of subtle. Like Mia Goth's look in the movie I'm obsessed with, and I don't really know why. It was just so tasteful with all of the parts of the boob showing except for like the one special part, you know? Also loved Jenna Ortega and Brittany Snow's outfit. Brittany Snow was giving Marilyn Monroe. And also, can we celebrate the fact that Brittany Snow is in a horror movie now? She hasn't done one since Would You Rather, which I think was like 10 years ago now. Anyway, so the costuming and the hair and makeup was on point for everyone. Obviously, I attempted the iconic Mia Goth look that everybody has been throwing on lately. I even tried to put some freckles on, but as you can see, that is a lot easier said than done. All of the girls and the gays and the theys have been trying to do this makeup look, and I have a strong feeling it's gonna come back during Halloween time. Anyway, this is my last stylistic note, but the suspense and the gore of this movie were really good. Sometimes it was way too predictable, but some moments, despite being predictable, still held a lot of tension. Some moments I was really holding my breath, and then other moments completely took my breath away. There was one super intense shock of the whole movie, and then I would say like a couple other more minor ones. For me, my main issue with the movie, I think, is just kind of all of the little inconsistencies. The uneven accents throughout really threw me off, and the kind of lack of an overarching stylistic vision for the movie. It just kind of felt like there was a lack of follow through with a lot of different things. But if you want to go in and just have like a very basic but titillating slasher, well then look no further, babes. But I still maintain that this movie is only okay. There's also a little bit of a self-aware vibe to it, like they reference Psycho in this movie, but then almost nothing about this movie really resembles Psycho. Not a great look when you rip off so many things about Texas Chainsaw Massacre and then reference another like masterclass in horror movie in your mediocre one. X said, you want a Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake but with way more softcore porn? Say less. Throw in Jenna Ortega and Mia Goth and a unique killer, and I don't think that X will be soon forgotten. It's just not a movie that I care for that much, and I think that 3 out of 5 stars is more than fair given how much of this movie was not original. We gotta talk about the thematics of this movie though before I get on to the spoilers section. This is kind of another praise, but I'm grateful that pretty much everybody was sexualized in this movie. It was not just the women. I was grateful for that because it's like, thank you, yes, women and, you know, gay people, we all watch horror too. It's a lot of straight men that get to make all the big budget stuff in this industry, but that's a qualm for another day. All the nudity in this movie kind of has to do with the messaging. So while there is equality in the exposure of these young bodies, it becomes abundantly clear that the younger bodies are the only ones of value in this movie's eyes. The entire message of this movie is so depressing because no matter how beautiful and special you are as a young woman, that is all going to be taken away from you. And aging is a horrifying, disgusting process. Maybe in some kind of meta way, the movie is calling out that kind of culture, like beauty culture, and the fact that we put so much stock into our looks and so much value into fit, youthful bodies when we should be looking for beauty in ourselves at any age. Or maybe it was trying to shed light on like the feminine experience and how our mental health deteriorates as we watch our bodies deteriorate in front of our very eyes. And it included the men as well, but we'll get more into that during the plot breakdown. But I was not picking up on a positive vibe in this movie, because anytime there was an older person or older body depicted on screen, it was a straight up horror element. Like, whenever an old person is on screen, that is when the movie is at its most disturbing. I'm not joking. The movie just seemed to have no empathy at all for the older characters, so that's why I'm so confused about what this movie was actually trying to say. And if it's just an extremely nihilistic take on aging, then I guess that's fine too. You know, there's something for everybody. But I could never get to the bottom of it, and I feel like this entire movie just kind of suffers from a personality crisis. Like, even the movie doesn't really know what it wants to be. There's just so much lack of consistency in kind of every facet of the movie. Anyway, I know that was a very long spoiler-free section, and I hope that I didn't give away too much, but now it's time for me to hit on all of the major plot points. It's not going to be a full plot breakdown today because the movie is not out on streaming yet, but it will be very soon, I believe at the end of this month. So I will close out by saying I think you should see this movie. I think that it is worth seeing to form your own opinion on. I have a feeling that on my next watch, once I lower my standards a little bit, I might just enjoy it as a pretty fun slasher. But anyway, on with the plot. The way that the movie opened had me feeling really hopeful because I was like, yes, come through Texas Chainsaw Massacre vibes. We discussed this though because things never took far enough of a left turn. I was like, oh, you're setting up all of these small town folks to be weirdos? I see what you're doing. You're gonna do something else. Making the old weirdo homeowners the killers would be too obvious. You're gonna do something more shocking, right? Right? Nah. Nope. We'll talk about the first kill soon, but there are a couple other points I gotta hit first. Here are the reasons why I was getting excited about a potential fun twist happening in this movie. I loved the style. I loved the inserted behind the scenes kind of stuff of the porno. So much so that I leaned over to my best friend Alyssa and I was like, yo, we should make another horror movie, because she's the one that produced my last one. And she was like, yeah, we should. So that had me really excited because this movie was so much fun and it was humanizing these sex workers. They were actually like pretty fleshed out characters, not fully, but they had personalities. So the general vibes were really fun at first, and also the way that they were ramping up the tension, I was getting excited. Because the alligator scene, like, hello? That was so tense. That was such an incredible scene, the way that it was shot from like the aerial POV. That's one of the most terrifying things about gators, because they are these giant predators, but they move with extreme quiet stealth in the water. So that was an example of an immaculately tense scene, and I was like, oh shit, what are they setting up for later? How central is this pond going to be? Because this is subverting my expectations. I'm thinking, oh, the old people are weird, but now it's about alligators. That's a really unique setting and could be a great twist on the TCM vibes that I was getting. And then at the end of the day, it was only a setup for one other very predictable scene in which Brittany Snow gets pushed into the water. I love that scene with Mia Goth in the pond, but I think that the only way that Brittany Snow's death would have been shocking is if we didn't know that there were gators in the pond, or if they had only spoken about them and we hadn't actually seen them. But then, no wait, what is that called? Is that a Deus Ex Machina, or the reverse of that, kind of? Because the Ex Machina thing, that's when a weapon appears out of nowhere that like saves the hero. What is it called when the danger appears out of nowhere? Because a Chekhov's gun is when you have a gun but that gun never goes off. There has to be a word for this. I'm sure there is. I should know this. I majored in film. Bad film critic. So whatever, we win some and we lose some with that scene. One of the weirdest plot points of this movie that also happens early on is when Jenna Ortega's character wants to have a scene, like she wants to have a sex scene in the porno, but her sort of boyfriend was the cinematographer and he was really hurt about that. Here is my time to shine, truly. This is how I would have fixed X. Keep the opening, and most of all, keep the intercut parts of the dirty film. Gonna start calling it the dirty film, because I gotta censor myself a little bit more. Then they set up the obvious red herrings being the old people, because it's like very TCM vibes. But then, what? A seemingly innocent girl experiences a sexual awakening and wants to have a sex scene in the movie against the wishes of her partner. The sound design of this movie was actually really good, so I would have used that to my advantage and made that scene a lot more implicitly disturbing, so we could imply a lot more noise going on, if you catch my drift. Put that actor playing the cinematographer hurt boyfriend to work. Give us an unbroken one shot of his face for like 30 painful seconds of him reacting to the situation. And it wouldn't even have to be like noises, it could just be very uncomfortable dialogue of her being like, oh, ouch, you know? Keep the scene of him breaking down in the shower and kind of confronting the old woman and running away. She's confused. The sundowner's moment is upon her. She starts coming on to him. Bam! He stabs her. Walk with me. He rolls the camera on her corpse. He crawls back into bed next to his girlfriend. The next morning, he acts like everything is fine. Maybe he's like a little bit unhinged, a little bit giving Jack Nicholson from The Shining. He is drunk with power and he's excited to start filming again. And slowly, the intercut shots of his dirty movie become progressively more and more horrific until he's essentially just shooting a snuff film. Get rid of the weird, conflicted message of the movie and just make it all about fragile masculinity. That's a win-win on either side for me. It's more fresh and original, and the style would be more consistent. You could even play that up so much by making him seem so weak and being so subordinate to all the people he's making the movie with, and then that would create a really dramatic turn of events when he just knifes the old woman. Anyway, we kind of have to go backwards now so I can carry on my thoughts with the actual plot of the movie. When the old woman stabbed him, I was like, oh, because my initial hunch was right, and I am just not a fan of predictable movies. I find it very boring. Just like when it's revealed that the husband is also killing people, because it's like, yeah, what do you think is gonna happen when it's the 70s and a black guy and a white guy with a shotgun go walking around a pond at night? Especially when this dude was swinging his absolute hog in front of him. My god, this man was comically hung. So the movie was also making commentary about how men put all of their worth into their dicks with the crybaby cinematographer and the murderous old man. That old man really said, "My heart, I don't think I can fuck you, Pearl." I'm jumping all over the place. It's a messy day. I'm sorry. Told you, I've gone absolutely feral. But need I really even go backwards? Like, there's no more plot between this and that. After the comically hung man is shot out by the pond, then Pearl climbs into bed with Maxine to, like, touch her skin, I guess. This kind of stuff that the movie presents just leads me to believe that I'm probably not really the target audience, even though I feel like I should be, right? Like, it has all the ingredients that I would like in a horror movie, but I don't like this kind of scare, just the most disturbing, skin-crawly lack of consent. It's just cheap, in my opinion, because of course this is disgusting. All I will say is that it just hits a little bit too close to home, and I wish they did something a bit more creative. It also feels like it comes really far out of left field. Like, tonally, I don't understand what this movie wanted to accomplish. Also, I didn't mention this earlier because it kind of feels like a spoiler, but Mia Goth plays both Pearl and Maxine, herself and the older woman, which I think is a really cool play on the commentary that they were making and maybe makes this scene a little bit more purposeful. So I'm just gonna give it the benefit of the doubt and go with that. And after that, the old man says, "Fuck my heart, I'm gonna pleasure my wife on this bed right here, right now." And honestly, that's kind of the energy that I need. Yeah, you better risk heart failure to uplift me in my moments of insecurity, baby, or else you're getting this ring back. Maybe that is the horror itself. Doing something that's meant to be uplifting, like having these prehistoric old people still love each other and still want to pleasure each other, but then presenting it in the most horrific and disturbing way possible. Maybe that's what they wanted, just for me to suffer an intense disconnect up here. Well then, bravo, Ty West. But anyways, let's just skip ahead to the end. Now, the final battle I was mostly a fan of, because for one thing, old pal just dies. Yeah, his heart could not take blowing his wife's back out anymore. But before that was the one true major shock of the movie. Our new favorite final girl, Jenna Ortega, runs out the door only to be blasted back immediately by a shotgun. I was processing that for a minute. But fast forward, one of the main things that sticks out about that scene is the fact that Pearl shoots the shotgun from inside the house and her ass is busted outside the front door. It reminded me so much of that Vine where the girl tumbles off of the swing set and then someone edits her onto the bowling lane. I was in stitches. But the one disappointing thing about that was it wasn't even anything that Mia Goth did, because obviously an old woman blasting herself out the front door off the porch via shotgun is a knockout move. It was super easy for Maxine to just walk out and finish the job, like she just ran over her head. So it had moments that I liked, but ultimately it was really anticlimactic. Like, have her fist fight the old lady, I don't care. She survived on pure circumstance pretty much much the entire time. Like the scene with her and the alligator, that could have been the end of her story right then and there, and she didn't even know it. So unfortunately, I don't feel like she did anything to merit a spot on my top 50 final girls list. Though I do love her philosophy on sex and love. I still really liked her character. And I also kind of love the reveal in the end where she turns out to be the daughter of the preacher that's just been yammering away this whole time on the TV in the movie. But it means nothing. Like, it was so random. It was just like, whoa, here's this connection, and that's it. That's it. It doesn't really mean anything, but there it is. I don't know if it's supposed to be like a good for her moment or... Yeah, it's unfortunate, but that's where I'm at with X. I am confused. I'm a silly little confused girl. Pretty much just Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but instead of Leatherface and Nubbins, it's Pearl and her limp dick husband. And instead of going to see their grandfather's estate, these young adults are shooting porn. I don't know. I think I'm rightfully disappointed. I didn't watch any trailers. I just knew kind of the loose premise going in. I didn't even know that it was going to be a slasher. So that should have been a really fun surprise, if nothing else. I love a surprise slasher. But whatever, I know that I am definitely in the minority of thinking that this movie is only okay, and I still have a lot of praises for it. I know this video got kind of bogged down by everything that I didn't like, but it's true. I was very confused. It's true. So there you have it, you old geezers. That's how I feel about X. To conclude this video, as always, I love my patrons. Thank you guys so much for your constant support. I've been trying to pump out a lot of bonus content over there for you, and I always announce it over on my community tab, so definitely check that out. It's only $5 a month for bonus content. If you want to see my initial reaction to X, like literally right when I walked out of the theater, you can see that on Patreon now. But if not, you can also check out all my other social media that is listed down below. I hope that you subscribe and click the notification bell. That way you can be notified the next time that I post and you never miss another video. But I hope that you enjoyed this one, and I hope I catch you in the next one. Bye!